Today's topic is about transitioning from industry to academia, and my guest is Dr. Rodney Ramcharan, professor at USC's Marshall School of Business. So I'm really delighted to speak with you, Rodney. From the few interactions that I've had with you, I mean, you come across as someone quite impressive and brilliant, really. So, I think here's what we do. Let's start with maybe giving our viewers a little bit of understanding of who you are, so tell me about your sort of academic and career journey, where did you go to school? What did you study? The interesting places that you worked at. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Komal. It's a pleasure to be here and chat with you as well. And you're awfully kind. So I did my Ph.D. at Columbia. I graduated in 2000, and then after that, I went to work at a place called the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And I worked there from 2000 up until 2010. And my last assignment there was working in South Africa, which was a fascinating assignment. That was about the middle of the beginning or the mid part of the financial crisis. And at about 2010, I left and joined the Federal Reserve, which turned out to have been just a couple of blocks down the street. I hadn't known that for 10 years.
Wow.
And made the transition to the Fed, which was also a very exciting time. This was right after the crisis at that point. And at the Fed, I worked on the regulatory side of the institution in terms of helping the institution think about the big banks and the big non-banks, which had played an important role in the crisis, and thinking of ways to regulate those institutions. And also trying to understand what role they had played during the crisis as well, because we hadn't known that. And so after spending about I think I spent about 4.5 years or 5 years at the Fed, I left. So I left the Fed. I was the section chief of the Systemic Institutions and Markets Group. I might be saying that backwards. It's been a long time. And then after that, I joined the faculty at USC in 2015 and have been here since.
Wow. That's impressive. Just like, every single place you worked at, just really cool. So what motivated the switch? Because now it's, I would say, moved from government, so to speak, right? To academia.
Yeah, it's a good question. The Fed is a wonderful place. And I think I learned, what's the way to say, I became intellectually who I was at the Fed because it was such a stimulating environment. At the same time, by 2014, 2015, we had been in DC for about 15 years at that point. And also the financial crisis had ended and all of the regulatory framework was set at that point. So it wasn't clear to me what the new and exciting things were going to be. And so that was one factor. And also at the Fed, I did a lot of research, wrote a lot of papers, and really enjoyed that process. And we were thinking, we always wanted to try the West Coast. And so the offer came up, and at that point, it just seemed like a natural thing to try.
Okay, so you say offer came up, right? But I mean, let's say, if I had to make a leap, right, from government to academia, and no offer comes up, right? I mean, I want to do that. How does a person make that leap? I mean, are there specific qualifications or experience that the academia, the academic world is looking for?
Yeah, so I think a good way to frame the question is that there's sort of two tracks in academia. You could come in as a teaching faculty, and I think that's relatively easy to do if you were in government and have a record of interacting with senior officials and policy. Then that makes you attractive inside the classroom, especially at business school. So that's track one. And I would imagine the way you would do that is every year in January, I think in the fall, in fact, all of business schools and academic finance departments, they post their jobs and people can then apply. So that's track one. And then track two is a little bit different, and that's being a tenured faculty, where a lot of the expectation isn't so much on the teaching side, but on the research side. And as I've used the word tenure, that you could, that's a bit of a more tricky track to get onto. And so the way that works is that comes via publications, and in academia, that's sort of the currency that they use to decide whether to offer tenure. And so so if you want to make the transition on the tenure side, which is, I think, a little bit more difficult to do, then that comes about by having the publications in the area that you're interested in, and then building that network over time.
Got it. Okay, so let's say I spend 5-10 years in industry, and then I want to switch right to academia. Now, you're a finance professional, so I understand our conversations are going to probably be, toward that. But help me understand this. I mean, how do I go about getting that job? I mean, do I submit a resume or a CV? I mean, who do I network with? Is it professors? Is there a specific sort of branding, that universities are looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to luck and mentorship. So in my case, I was pretty fortunate co-authoring with a mentor who, is a well-known person in academia, taught me a great deal. And I think being part of that network, both the learning part and then the information part, both that person presents your information to others and you learn from him as well. I think that's critical. And a general principle is that I think in any field where it's highly specialized and difficult to understand, then the network gets very, very critical. So you got to network with faculty. Presumably you have to network with the faculty of the schools you want to go to. But more generally, you want to network with faculty at the feeder schools. So in academia, as you know, there's going to be a couple of schools that are at the top of the echelon. And if you have a network there, then that makes it a lot easier for you to find a position elsewhere.
Okay. And then let me ask you one final question. What is that one advice you would give a candidate who wants to make that move to academia just the way you did? One advice, if you had, what would that be?
So the one advice is, I think, if you want to go the tenure route, then you have to publish extensively. That's the one advice. I can say more, but you said one, so I'll stop. I think that's the advice. Yeah.
When you say extensively, what does it mean? Is it quantity? Is it quality?
So it's going to be quality. I think at the places you want to go to, the emphasis is going to be on quality. So you got to publish a great deal in the high quality journals. And unfortunately, in academia, the bar is different inside compared to outside. So it's a very guild kind of a culture. So if you're a known quantity inside the network, the bar is a little bit different than if you're an unknown quantity outside the network. Then you have to be, your CV, your quantity of publications, the quality and impact have to be pretty high to get over the guild. So yeah, I think that's a candid assessment of how to make the transition. So network and try to write as many good papers as you can.
All right. And then you didn't answer my CV versus resume question.
CV, you need a CV. In academia, it's all about this. It's a long CV. Yes.
Which has that list of publications, right?
Which has the list of publications.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, Rodney, this was great. So thank you for taking the time today. I'm hoping that our conversation will help an individual who's trying to make this sort of pivot, switch, to academia. So I appreciate your time very much.
Of course, and on that vein, I mean, if somebody looks at this and would like to learn more, they should feel free to contact me through your site as well. So I'm glad to be of use in that way as well.
That's fantastic. And thank you for the offer. Okay. Bye, Rodney.
Bye, Komal. It was a pleasure.